Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, we are returning to open session after having voted previously to go into executive session to discuss the strategy with respect to potential litigation regarding Beal Street. At this time, I'll entertain a discussion with respect to the issue of 100 Beal Street in Hingham. We have with us tonight our real estate counsel for the town, Attorney Susan Murphy. Please join us at the table and just briefly give us a backdrop of the issue before us tonight.
In 2001, the Board of Selectmen and the then Board of the Housing Authority entered into a memorandum of understanding, which was very brief. It's a one-page agreement pursuant to which the town agreed to pay for the cost of demolition and cleanup of two old structures on approximately 15 acres of land owned by the Housing Authority on Beal Street. These structures were buildings similar to the ones that are in Bear Cove Park in that area that had become dilapidated and had some hazardous materials in them, such as asbestos, those types of materials. The then town administrator, I understand, spoke to the Housing Authority board about the fact that the town was remediating these buildings on town land, but that town could not pay to do it on land it did not own, which was the Housing Authority land. And a agreement was struck where, in consideration for the town paying the cost of demolition and remediation, that the Housing Authority would transfer 8 of the 15-acre parcel that it owned on Beal Street. The matter went before town meeting to authorize the town to acquire the land. Town meeting approved it. Letters went from the Housing Authority to the federal government, who at that time, but no longer does, held restrictions related to the land, stating that they no longer had any need for the land, etc. The town did the work. The town accounts office has located documentation that the town paid to do the work for reasons which are not fully known. There was a gap in time between that work happening and before there being a realization that no deed had ever been recorded. And this was discovered about 1.5 years or so ago to 2 years, brought to the Housing Authority's attention through multiple meetings, both with the former town administrator, Ted Alexiadis, and Karen Johnson as liaison to the Housing Authority. And there's been multiple meetings over the last 1.5 years, at least 3 to 4. And at the most recent meeting that I attended with Selectman Johnson and Michelle Monsegur, a vote was taken as to whether or not the Housing Authority would follow through on its commitment to execute a deed and take whatever other steps are necessary to convey the 8 acres to the town. And the Housing Authority voted 3 votes against and only 2 votes in favor, and therefore the motion failed. So at this point in time, there's an agreement with a commitment. The town has spent taxpayer dollars on the demolition of this project and has not received any consideration in return for spending taxpayer dollars on land that the town does not own. And that is the current state of affairs. I don't know if Selectman Johnson has anything additional.
No, I appreciate that summary. As you can tell from Susan's description, this has been a long process, both in terms of the contract and the removal of the building, and then the discovery of the lack of the deed, and conversations with the Housing Authority that I at least joined in 2017. We have had ongoing discussions with the Housing Authority since 2017. They've asked some good questions. We've provided them with all of the diligence materials that they've requested over time, so that they could fully understand their obligation under the signed contract from 2001. And there's been no disagreement that the contract exists. There's been no disagreement that the buildings were removed, so that the town had provided full consideration under the 2001 contract. There's no disagreement on any of that. And so we've reached an impasse where the last several meetings when we've gone before them to discuss, okay, well, what else do you need to understand your obligation here and to fulfill your obligation under the contract? We really haven't, there is nothing else. This is it. So we have a signed agreement. At the time, folks in the audience may remember, there was a series of derelict buildings in and around that Bear Cove Park area that were a public nuisance and actually dangerous. And, one of the things I thought about was, so, here's the town. The town has the wherewithal to take these buildings down. We were actually contacted by our insurance agent to do just that. And we get to the line, right? We get to the fence with our neighbor, the housing authority, and we have the ability to take these buildings down, and they don't, because they don't have any cash. And we say, all right, well, we're going to take down what we view as derelict and dangerous buildings, but we're not going to look across the fence to our neighbor, the housing authority, and say, hey, we'll help you out too. That's what the town did in 2001, and what we're asking for is the housing authority to live up to the promise that it made to pay the town, to pay the taxpayers of the town for the work that the town did. It's a pretty straightforward contract question, and we've come to an impasse in conversations with the housing authority, and that's why, as a liaison to the housing authority, I requested this executive session tonight so that I could fully brief you on the potential for litigation, which I unfortunately view as the place we're at.
Any questions?
Not at this time.
Are any of the housing authority members that signed the contract with the town in 2001 still on the housing authority?
Yes,
Who are they?
Robert Keys and James Watson were members in 2001. Their signatures appear on the contract, and they are still members of the housing authority.
And were they part of the majority that voted against transferring this?
Yes, they were two of the three that voted against the transfer.
Public discussion? Hearing none. I'll entertain a motion to file litigation regarding the enforcement of agreement as to 100 Beal Street in Hingham, Mass.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes dated February 12th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Warrant article. Article H, transfer for a meals tax stabilization fund. Tom.
Sure. Let me just catch up here for a second.
You need that musical interlude?
I do, if you don't mind. It'd be very helpful right now. Okay, so the meals tax table, this is an annual article. Historically, this money has been used to reduce the tax rate as related to the debt service on the middle school, I believe. And we're outside of that schedule now. There's about $120-some thousand remaining in this account and the intent in this fund. And the intent is to either use it to empty the fund to continue to pay down a capital project, for instance, or to leave it there. So if you want a recommendation from me, I would suggest that we use it to pay down a large capital project, for instance, the dredging project, for instance, that we're going to have to go out to issue a debt
So the dredging that we heard about previously, that we would borrow
right.
to fund, this would just defray some
It
of the
would
costs.
defray about $120,000 of that. That's right.
Okay. And does the fund, do we have to take a vote to close this fund out? Or does the fund, once it's zeroed out, the fund?
Yeah, so what I suggest we do is that we fund that item that, quite frankly, it's really probably going to be AdCom's call.
Okay.
How that works, I would suggest you simply take favorable action on it tonight, and I'll make a recommendation on your behalf to advisory about what that comment and what their motion might look like. But the, is, you know,
Okay. And so AdCom would know the balance of the stabilization fund.
yeah.
We'd make a recommendation, but it might be up to AdCom, or would be up to AdCom to direct where the balance of the stabilization fund goes.
So we'll fund the amount of the balance at the time of the transaction.
I see.
So because it's constantly earning interest, so we don't want to pick a number now,
Yeah.
because it would be insufficient. We'd end up with 17 cents in an account
Okay.
that we wouldn't be able to close out, so.
Okay.
And just the,
But I'll recommend that to
the
the
background on this was that initially when the meals tax, when town meeting voted to authorize the meals tax, we put all the money in a stabilization account. And then we basically drew that down. When the middle school opened, there was about $2 million in the stabilization fund. And so we took about $500,000 each year to defray the taxpayer impact. That was the tax relief that we experienced with the middle school. A few years ago, when the meals tax, when town meeting authorized the town to move the meals tax revenue into local receipts, we've basically been drawing down this stabilization fund, and this is the little bit that's left. It's like, in a sense, we kind of had one bank account, and we switched banks, and, you know, we wrote all our checks, and we've got a little bit of money left. From my perspective, what I said to Tom earlier today is, when town meeting adopted the meals tax, it was under the premise that it be used not for everyday expenses, not for operating expenses, but to defray the costs of capital projects. So for me, the principle that's important here is this very small residual balance be applied to a capital project, because that's how, that to me was an important part.
Expectation, yep.
That was an important part of town meeting's discussion. I'd like to do it on a project that town meeting is considering this year so that we can close it out. And I think we have a couple options, but again, that principle of applying it to a capital project would be the only condition that I'd ask to be placed on it.
Discussion? Hearing none? Entertain them.
You've got a hand.
Yes, Counsel. Welcome. The laptop, go.
Andy McElhaney with the Advisory Committee. So the Article H talked about a transfer to defray the 2020 fiscal year tax rate, so it's fair to say that the board has determined there's more of an economic benefit for the taxpayer to use this small amount, $120,000, to defray the borrowing costs than to make an insignificant impact on the tax rate. Is that?
I think we're still carrying the $500,000 underride, though, right?
Yes, we are.
So this is just the fact that we, had the old stabilization fund, so we used to segregate meals tax. We don't segregate meals tax anymore.
Right.
So I suppose you could just add this on to the $500,000 underride that we carry, that we fund with the meals tax, right? Or you could do this.
Andy's bringing up a good question, and without getting into the weeds on this.
Come on, you know you want to.
Well, financial weeds, yes. So the article as written is for purposes of reducing the tax rate, which begs the question to me, and thank you for asking the question of whether this has to be actually applied to an excluded debt project. Because if you think about the dredging project or the windows at the high school or something,
All
those
with
are
an
being
operating
funded
debt.
with non-excluded debt, so they would not achieve the purpose of reducing the tax rate. So if we want to follow the letter of Article H, that would suggest to me that an alternate use besides what we've just spoken about is to just make an extra $170,000 payment against the middle school, which in effect reduces the tax rate for next year because it's excluded debt.
I can work with Andy on some of the options that they might consider with regards to their motion.
It could be also fungible, right? You know, we could well, whatever, it gets too complicated, I guess. You could use some of the underride money to fund this, keeping the underride constant at $500,000.
We could split it among all the different.
So I think what we're hearing here is that the board has consensus that we'd like to close this out because we've been now, it's a little bit of money that's hanging out there, that we would like to apply it to a capital project, which is keeping within the spirit of it. And maybe there's just a follow-up on the mechanics to ensure that the project it's applied to is in compliance with the wording of the article.
So long as Andy's not bitter that we're kicking it to him to,
No, so long as Susan doesn't say that he keeps making rookie mistakes.
Thank you for asking.
We had some fun at the planning board meeting last night.
Would you take a motion?
Sure, please.
I'll make a motion to recommend favorable action on Article H.
second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Martin's Lane. Counsel.
So I need you to, if you would, open the public hearing. This is a public hearing, so if you could do that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, well, I'll open up the public hearing as it relates to Martin's Lane, so far as it's the layout discussion we were discussing previously.
Okay, so this is the public hearing on the intention of the Board of Selectmen to lay out 40 square feet as part of Martin's Lane. The board had previously had this on your agenda, say a little less than a month ago. At that time, you referred the matter to the planning board pursuant to statutory process. The planning board took it up at a public meeting, at which point they voted to recommend acceptance. A notice of this public hearing was sent to the owner of record, and also because the owner of record, we believe, is not an entity that currently exists in Massachusetts any longer, it was also posted in Town Hall in order to cover all posting requirements, and a copy was made available at the town clerk's office. So at this point in time, you know, unless there's anyone who wishes to be heard on it, if the Board of Selectmen wishes town meeting to take up the warrant article to accept this 40 square foot area, it would require the Board of Selectmen to take the vote, which I believe has been provided to you. Town meeting cannot act on a street acceptance unless the selectmen have voted to lay it out.
We discussed this previously, but to the extent there's any further questions, I'll entertain them now. Anybody from the public? All right, well, in that case, move that we vote favorable action.
There's a vote you have to take, and it should be in your vote list.
I think I'm reading from it.
Notice of, it begins
Intention.
notice of the
Yep.
intention. Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
That we move to vote favorably on notice of the intention to lay out as a part of the public way known as Martin's Lane, an approximately 40 square foot parcel of land located to the west of the northwesterly terminus of the existing layout of Martin's Lane, as shown on a plan entitled, quote, Layout Plan Martin's Lane, Hingham, Mass, Plymouth County, end quote, dated February 4th, 2019, prepared by Beals and Thomas, Inc., having been sent by first-class mail to the owner of record and posted in a public place not less than 7 days prior to the date of this public meeting, in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 82, Section 22, the Board of Selectmen hereby order the layout of said 40 square foot parcel as a part of Martin's Lane.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
MOU?
Yep. Or you wanna grab another chair? I don't, however you want to do it.
Anybody here from the high school rowing program?
Yes.
And Dot, I don't know if Dot wants to join us or not. Dot,
We've got 2 seats.
did you want to come up too?
You're welcome to join us.
Yeah, if you want to.
Do you want to bring another chair up?
Navy's here. How are you?
I'll just-
Greetings.
Welcome.
Greetings, Selectmen. I'm Jack Chapin, President of Hingham High School Rowing Association. With me here is Logan Greenlee, our program director, and of course, Dot and Jim Quattromoni from Hingham Athletics. This evening, we're presenting a continuation of our pilot program for the spring training on the Back River based at Bear Cove Park. We began this pilot program in the spring of 2018. The program did very well there, so this year, time spent training on the water early season was significantly greater than it was in the previous season. Therefore, we're proposing to essentially do the same program again this season.
Okay. My colleagues have any questions?
When are you going to start?
March 18.
Okay, and I know that when you're getting the boats in the water and things, the student athletes are kind of in the water a little bit more than if they were in a dock. I'm just wondering about, temperature of the water and...
Right,
Just-
exactly. And we went through the challenges
It's going to be mighty
last year.
cold in March.
It is, and the water's exceptionally cold, too. The water stays cold
Yep.
longer. So last year, we found a good system, a combination of waterproof socks, Gore-Tex socks, and easily like Crocs or something on their feet that would get them. They only need to go down to about their knee level. So we found out a system that worked well last year for them, and then we'll do the same this year. We'll just put out to all the parents, and with the specs, this is what we recommend for the clothing. And they should do very well with that, because that's how it turned out well. After a couple days of figuring it out, and that's we'll do the same there, I'm assuming.
And Tom, this MOU runs for, is it just the spring season, or is it also for the fall?
I think it's not the fall.
It's only the spring.
It's only the spring, and
The
so,
spring's only what we need. 'Cause
Okay.
in the fall, we'll be back at HMC.
okay.
Same as last season, right?
Okay.
And you'll have the temporary storage.
Temporary storage
For-
set up,
for the boats
right?
there as well.
Same things, we'll use the fence, have the porta potties, and the boats all behind a locked fence.
Okay. And I see the harbor master here. I think the program, from your perspective, worked well, is what I understood. Okay. Okay. No, I mean, I'm all for getting them out on the water as soon as we can, so.
It worked pretty well last year, so
Good.
looking forward to another season there.
I'll take a motion.
Can I just, two quick things. First one is, and just with respect to the agreement that's in front of you, there's going to be just an update for some of the notice contacts for the high school rowing program, so that will be one minor change, or just updating names in the notice provision. So that will be something that we'll change that page out. It's on page 6. They have some individuals named, and they're just gonna update that. The other thing that I just want to mention, if I could, just while we have everybody in the room together, which is, this is the second year of what's being termed a pilot program. I believe I mentioned it when we gathered last year for the same conversation, that this required National Park Service approval, which we got very quickly last year and again this year, but it can't be forever a pilot program, and there's some formalities in order to make it more permanent. I have heard that, both the rowing program, also the Bear Cove Park Committee, have talked favorably about making it a more permanent program, but that means we need to get started probably much earlier. I would recommend that by the end of the summer, if there's discussion about trying to put it in, we'd have to change some we have to do some paperwork with the National Park Service, and also I know that Lonnie Fournier at the Conservation Office would like to just talk about how, things get managed if it's a long-term project. So I would just encourage, to the extent people are interested in kind of keeping this going, that, we just get started earlier next year, or early, like in the fall of this year, to start putting all those pieces in place. So,
I mean, I think we want to be supportive of this effort. I think it's been working well for everybody. And so, we don't want the National Park Service a year from now to, we don't want any hiccups. So,
Well, we'll stay on that then.
I'd also say that, sometimes when we kind of wait till the fall, you get well into your fall season, you've got new students and all that. Let's even get on it in the summer if we need to, just so that we don't find ourselves running out of time, and limiting what's really a great partnership.
Absolutely.
And I would note, you know, it seems that the Bear Cove Park Committee's in support of this as well. Right?
Yes.
No objection?
Yep.
Okay.
Motion?
I move that the Board of Selectmen, acting as the Board of Park Commissioners, approve and enter into a memorandum of understanding with Hingham Public Schools to allow the use of Bear Cove Park to access the back river for the Hingham High School rowing program for the spring 2019 season, subject to delivery to the Board of Selectmen of updated certificates of insurance prior to the commencement of use, including staging within the park.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, temporary location of storage rack for the Hingham High School sailing team in Hingham Harbor. Anybody here on that one?
That's for our sailing program, and it would run.
I don't know if you can you edit this?
One line.
Sorry.
Our sailing program last year,
Identify your team.
yes, so
Home.
Joe Griffin, our head sailing coach.
Hi,
Welcome.
Joe. How you
Joe.
doing?
Good to see you.
Our sailing program last year had these racks in place to be able to launch from the bathing beach before the docks went in at HMC. We would respectfully ask that we be able to do that again this year.
Sure. Any questions from my colleagues?
No, again, I think.
I just mention again that I think this is another example of the great cooperation due to the hard work of a lot of people in this room to, you know, kind of help each other out. So this is getting the sailing team up and running, and also we know that for Hingham Maritime Center that the earlier in the season those docks get in, the more wear and tear that it can be pretty punishing in the harbor in March and April. So I think we've been trying to work together on creative solutions that meet everybody's needs, and it's nice to see us being able to build off a success from last year.
We certainly appreciate that.
Anybody in the audience? No. Okay, take a motion.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Selectmen acting as the Board of Park Commissioners approve the temporary location of storage racks for the Hingham High School sailing team at Hingham Harbor for the period ending on April 30th, 2019, in the location shown on the aerial plan submitted to the Town Administrator on January 11th, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Good luck.
Have a good season.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Aquarion water main replacement. Okay. Mr. Olson, good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Sylvester, Lieutenant DiNapoli. What do we have here?
We have
Brings you all to the table.
a proposed water main extension along Abington Street, initiating from the entrance to the South Shore Educational Collaborative, which is approximately at the Weymouth Town line on Abington Street, extending an 8-inch main, approximately 1,350 feet, to the entrance of a proposed daycare facility, Little Sprouts, located at approximately 73 Abington Street. The water main extension, the proposed water main extension also includes a fire hydrant at the end of that water main extension. So the primary purpose is to deliver water to the daycare facility, as I mentioned, but also for the proposed, if approved, other facilities. Not sure what the status of that development is, of a storage facility. So we'd be leaving stubs to provide service for that in the future, if it's approved. And we understand that the street is a guaranteed street. This is the last year of, 2019 is the last year on the 5-year moratorium, but due to the service needs of this facility, we're looking for the town to waive that for this portion. And I guess Harry can speak for the engineering department on that.
So the proposed water line is going to come out of the driveway of the charter school?
Yes, that's the existing termination or terminus of the existing water system. There's a fire hydrant right there, and a valve and a stub that was put there for future extension, and the plan is to extend from there.
And it looks like there's some kind of configuration with a, is this property presently constructed or contemplated before you get to the proposed daycare facility?
That's the proposed or contemplated facilities. I believe it's proposed to be a storage facility. The 3 buildings?
Yes.
Yes. I'm not sure what phase of the planning and approval process that.
Who's the applicant for that? Okay.
DC Properties?
And is there somebody here for the applicant?
Yes, Mayor, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, Walter Sullivan, the attorney for MDM Properties, with me, Matt Montgomery and Frank Pollock, who are from the applicant.
Mr. Sullivan, perhaps you could take the podium and just give us a brief thumbnail discussion as to what's going on here and where you fit into this project.
This has been quite a journey for water. So I'm the attorney representing the applicant for the school that's been completed. The board may remember I was here in November seeking a road cutting permit so that we could get water for the school. The school has been completed and has been vacant, notwithstanding the fact that there are students and families that wish to use it. We don't have a certificate of occupancy because we don't have access to water. Recognizing there was a moratorium, we reached out to an abutter to get an easement from them. When the board turned us down for cutting into the road, as Mr. Olson suggested, we then pursued the easement from Air Gas, which is right behind us, which would not require us to cut into the road. I believe the DPW has now come forward and suggested that we cut into Abington Street and go up that way. We're sort of held hostage. We need to open. We have families that have signed up. We have people that want to work at the school. So we're here at the request of the selectmen, hoping that somehow we can get some water and get moving.
So I remember you came in November because it was the most unusual, it was an unusual thing. And I just want to read this because this is dated Tuesday, November 6, 2018. Dear Tom Mayo, I am following up on my letter late last month regarding getting before the selectmen. Essentially, Aquarion is requiring that we get a letter from the selectmen that permission to cut into Abington Street to tie into the water main will not be granted since the moratorium is in place. Our client has arranged for an easement that will result in no disturbance to the public way, but Aquarion requires that in order to use an easement for water service, that the selectmen must refuse to allow the applicant to cut into a public way still on a moratorium. So you came in November and asked for that no vote, which we gave.
Correct.
And I kind of thought that would be the end of it. I was a little surprised that this was back up on the agenda, and so I'm kind of wondering what happened. It seemed like there was an agreement in place with all the parties that that this easement would be done. So what?
Excuse me?
I can't really address that.
I can answer that?
Yeah.
For some reason or another, I don't know where it fell through the cracks, but the request to cut into Abington Street never came to our office. So we were unaware that there was a request to put that water main in Abington Street. We feel now, as we did then, we strongly recommend the Board of Selectmen to approve the water main being installed in the road. As of right now, I think it's a 1.5 inch or 2 inch water service. So it's considered a main in Abington Street, served by Abington Rockland Water. The reason why that main was put in the early 60s is because all those homes were on wells. They went dry. The DPW superintendent at the time had some extra electrical conduit, from what I understand, made a deal with Abington Rockland to supply those houses with water if they put that electrical conduit in the ground. Right now, there's no ownership of that water main in the ground. Every time there's a water break, which is numerous, they cut the road, and the ratepayers on Abington Street pay for that repair. There's no fire service up there at all for hydrants on the entire length of Abington Street. So we recommend we get this 1,800 feet or whatever it may be started in the ground on Abington Street, so there's a formal water main to connect. I have been involved several times was trying to get a formal 8-inch water service main up there over the last 20 years. But the expense of bringing water in to that location was just too much for any of the private entities to pay for to install that water. So now we have water that was brought to the end of Abington Street to the Weymouth line by another developer 5 years ago, I think it was. And now we have an opportunity to extend it, put a formal water main in at least a third of that road, and get fire protection in a third of the road, and possibly in the future, extend it down the entire length.
And so, Harry, who will be responsible for the cost of the installation of this water main?
The developer will be paying to put the water main in and also to make the road repairs. To put the road back in is probably as close to the condition it's in now, or if not better.
I guess what's a little unusual is that you typically, it's a little unusual for the engineering department to be recommending that the board cut into a street before the moratorium has
That is correct. It's
has
just
done. And let me just ask, because I'm not as good at reading the plans as Paul is, but is this solution, which I understand the developer is going to pay, how does the cost of this solution compare to the solution of the easement that was initially contemplated? Is this a big burden on?
Well, can I back up for a second? When I
Please.
came to you and I wrote that email to Tom Mayo, we had spent months negotiating with not only Aquarion, but 2 different abutters to try to get water, because we
Right.
recognized this was a problem. So we did think that was just the hurdle, and this was pro forma to come before the selectmen, which is why we wrote that letter. I think there's been a change from where the DPW stands now in Aquarion. So yes, it will be more expensive to us to bring the water down Abington Street than to go through the easement. But, you know, we just need water. I mean, that's sort of where we stand, and we've sort of been caught in the middle by all this.
No, and I understand, and actually, a Hingham resident who is a new parent actually phoned our office, and, you know, I think it's an unfortunate situation that we have. You know, I spoke to a resident and a Hingham taxpayer who has an 8-week-old child and is making the transition back to the workforce, and, you know, that's a difficult time as it is, and I think the anxiety that this is creating, not just on that family, but potentially on others, is not lost on the board. Again, it sort of caught us by surprise based on the last time we talked about this, so I think we get the urgency here.
What is the proposed use that your client is going to be constructing here?
So, okay, so for the 3 buildings, there's 3 different uses, Mr. Healy. One is in like an easy storage facility, which is the bigger building that you look at.
Okay.
The other is an elevator company that's potentially going in there, and the other is a smaller industrial building. So those are 3 different uses, and we're just about through the permitting process with Planning and Zoning Board. In fact, we were before, my associate's before the Zoning Board right now on this.
Has site plan review been performed by the planning
Yes.
board?
Yep.
Okay. And you've got that?
They've all the hearings have been closed. The decisions have not been issued.
Okay, okay.
But the daycare facility itself has been constructed.
It
right?
has. It's been
Sitting
completed
there.
for quite a while. We had hoped to open by January.
Okay.
And there are people who I've understood and have had to try to make alternate arrangements, and it's a dicey situation.
I think lieutenants and applicants speak to. We have a completed building that has no access to water.
Mr. Olson, is there an intention to loop the water main here?
There is a proposed intention to loop the water main, yes. It's always better to loop a main than have a dead end. We've been trying to loop mains since I got here 3 years ago. I think we've looped probably 8 mains in the past 3 years, so.
Does that enhance the water pressure?
It's better for capacity and water quality, and service reliability.
How about pressure?
Not so much pressure, flow and capacity and service reliability.
Are we on the extreme end of the system in this
We are,
location?
it's the end of the line, yeah.
Is the main that's proposed to be installed in Abington Street contemplating the capacity to extend it to the end of the street?
Yes,
It's 8-inch, you say?
it is.
And if I may, if it would be quicker, we would be willing to do the easement in the first instance and then connect once the moratorium's up in a year, whatever the board chooses. But again, we're sort of desperate for water.
Questions from the audience?
I live on Abington.
Okay, this is how we do it, ma'am. You go up to the podium, you identify yourself by name and address, make whatever statement you care to. Go from there.
Hi.
How you doing?
My name is Wendy Spanigal. This is my first time doing this. I live on Abington Street. I live on 31 Abington Street with my mom and my sister. And we're concerned about this water main that's coming down our street. Want to propose to our street because we do have Abington and Rockland. Now, is that going to upset the apple cart here for the rest of the residents on our street that have that? Like, do we have to pay, like, when you do this, do we pay for the Aquarion water company, that money, you know, the water department, you know, the water bills for that? And then when they're thinking of proposing and boosting it up to our street, is that gonna, like, because like we said, we have part of the water, we're part of on that water pipeline too. So I just want to know, this is just, I don't know why the sprouts we even got there, because if there's no water source, why would you build right there? You know, I don't understand, because this is a residential street and it's been there for so long. So.
You know, I have an answer for that, but I prefer to defer to the parties that are present that specialize in this particular area. Perhaps one or both
I
of
can
you
address a
speak
couple
to
things.
that.
So you primarily asked two questions. One, is there any future plans to extend? And there aren't any. There's no formal plans to extend. There is a desire to increase the fire flow capacity in the area, but there's no current plans to extend. And your second question was being required to connect or something? Or?
Well, not really to do that. I was just wondering, you know, with this whole, the South Shore Collateral was being built on the end of our street, and the whole water situation too. We went to a meeting with the water company before. Some of the residents, we went there, talking about they were wanting to do that before when they were redoing our street. Yep. Before they repaved it, they wanted to put a water main down there, and they kind of didn't do that. So I didn't know what was going on.
I think that was 2014 thereabouts, and I believe there was another developer across the street, across from 73 Abington Street. I forget the name of that facility, that was going to build, and I think maybe they did build, and that proposed water main extension was for them.
Right.
I think they determined that they didn't need it.
Okay.
They went there with their own well, so the existing water main terminated at where it is right now, at the entrance to the South Shore Collaborative School.
Okay.
So can I ask you, you pay right now Abington Rockland Water Company?
Yes, my
for your
mom
water?
does. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
we do.
And so her water service is not going to be disturbed by this project, is that
Correct.
right?
But in future, like we got a letter in our in the mailbox saying that we want to do future. Eventually, what you were just saying, that you wanted to end it all the way up to the Rockland side, where Sharp Street is. That will affect us also.
So, as part of the engineering department's response to our grant location application, they made a recommendation to the board, and I'll read it. We also recommend the Board of Selectmen, as part of this grant of work, be advertised to all residents that reside on Abington Street to have the chance to extend the water main, so it's just the chance, further, in order to connect as part of the water main extension. So the water line that exists currently to serve this area is inadequate and does not provide fire services as well as sufficient flow, which is what Lieutenant DiNapoli said. So our letter, we read this, and we took it to heart, and we basically sent a letter to all the residents beyond 73 Abington Street to Sharp Street to say, hey, we're going to be here tonight to talk about this, and if there's an opportunity or interest to extend it further, let us know. So I've heard from 3 residents that lived in that area. 2 were interested, but not if they had to pay for it. Which I think is what I would, if the question was pointed to me, that's what I would probably say too. And a 3rd was interested. He's at the end of Abington Street, I think it was 5 Abington Street. His name is Mr. Teixeira, Tony Teixeira. He was interested. He has a failing well, so I asked if he could connect to the Abington-Rockland line. He said he didn't think so he was still interested in trying to connect. So that's, we did our due diligence to see if there's any interest, which would be a supplemental type of thing, not part of this, what's in front of you.
And Steve, how many residents are?
There are about 25 residents, approximately, maybe
And-
23 and a couple businesses.
And the extension beyond 73 Abington Street would be the responsibility of those residents along that extension?
Yes.
Lieutenant, in the opinion of the fire department, would this enhance the department's ability to fight a fire up in that neck of the woods, should there be one?
Absolutely. I mean, on Christmas morning, we had a fire at 43 Abington Street, and that's pretty much just about the middle of the street. It was about, I believe, 1,600 feet to one hydrant and 1,800 feet to the other. We ended up having to call in a mutual aid engine just to get enough hose and pump up the street to the fire. So any more hydrants we can get, I mean, and especially in that area where we're so remote, it's an extended response time up there anyway, so any help we can get is a benefit.
And I will note that there is a fire hydrant put at the end of the line for fire protection and/or flushing right before the entrance, or right after the entrance to leave. So as part of this proposed grant allocation.
Plus, there's also a fire hydrant also at the end of Springwood, too. I've seen
Okay.
it. So there's one right there.
And
When they
Harry,
built that street, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And when they built that street, Springwood, they have a hydrant right at that end of that street, right there.
thank you.
So did you get your questions answered?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Good, thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Name and address, if you would.
Hi, my name's Marissa Disidoro, 11 Pine Grove Road. Mary, we spoke.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So I am a potential patron of Little Sprouts. I have a now 10-week-old infant.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm looking to return to work. I was supposed to return April 1st. So right now I've been searching day in and day out for any nearby alternatives to cover what was to be my return to work, just impacted by this hullabaloo. And I'd just like to know, based on what was said tonight, there are 3 other buildings in the area that are going up in that area. I'd like to know if approved to extend the water main, is there priority given to just get the service turned on at Little Sprouts, or is there other, would there be interruption due to extending it to the other facilities as well?
I believe the priority is Little Sprouts.
Okay.
And how quickly do you think, would you turn to this?
I think we probably start getting them in the ground week after next, if the contractor's ready to start installing pipe. I wouldn't think more than 2 weeks to get that pipe installed up to the driveway and into the building, but that's more up to the contractor to.
I think.
And that works with your schedule?
I think also because the proposed route goes past the wetland, there might be some conservation involvement, so we have to talk with Lonnie to make sure if there's something formal would have to be done, or it can be informal, so I'm not sure. But that would be the only, opening the road, off-season, and conservation. Other than that, it's contractors could put in, 100, 150 feet a day, so a couple weeks.
And Harry, you have the authority, or town engineering has the authority to allow them to open the road off-cycle?
That's correct. As long as the weather's going to cooperate, there's no problems with starting early.
Okay.
And Harry, in terms of the, kind of the, the repair to the road and the restoration, are you satisfied that the conditions that are laid out in this letter that's in our packet are appropriate given where this road is? And I know sometimes when we've cut into roads under the moratorium, the engineering department has, asked, for example, to go curb to curb, or to do some restoration a little bit beyond what is sometimes typical.
Abington Streets are rather unique. It was falling apart, there was potholes everywhere, and one of the reasons why we never fully reconstructed it is because there's no water main in it. It's a 2-inch water service, basically. So we crossed our fingers, held our nose. We ran a paver over it twice, and we put the microseal on it. I've had 5 other towns come out and say, "What did you do to that road?" It come out perfect. I said, "Well, I can't take really. I designed what we did, but I can't really take credit for the condition it came out in. We'll be doing the same process once the water main's in over the open trench. We'll be leveling it and putting the micro seals on it, and hopefully it'll come out just as well.
Thank you.
I mean, I have to say, I'm just puzzled by the lack of process here. You know, we took that weird vote in the fall. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it should have taken this long to get to this place.
Well, in fairness, I just want to, when they came in November, the street opening deadlines were closed on the 15th. We could extend them at that point in time as well, but, so really, I mean, if we held to the deadline and the starting dates, they were still going to be, they're back against the wall, so, you know, it's just the whole thing's been a little bit of, you know, not the prototypical request, so, but right now, we can do the best we can with what we're dealt with and get in the ground early. I don't think there's a problem with that, and getting the school online as soon as we can.
I'm of the view that this is such an extreme end of the town that every time there's a public safety response, it's aggravated by the distance from everything. So anything that improves it, I'm for. And, you know, I'm just going on my own experience, having responded to that neck of the woods. Unless there's any other discussion.
There was one other. No? Oh.
Yes, Dr. Gallo?
So not to confuse things, but sitting over there, I heard someone there mention the charter school.
Yeah.
The school that we're talking about on Abington Street is the South Shore Educational Collaborative School. I'm the chairman of the board of that entity this year. So just for the clarity of the public, it's a South Shore Educational Collaborative. The charter school actually is in Industrial Park, but it's in Norwell.
Thank you. It's probably my fault. Yes, ma'am. You wanted to say something?
Yes.
Join us at the microphone if you would.
Sandra Durth at 36 Abington Street. We're kind of the other end of the tracks. There's not that many of us up there. There's 13 on the line, on the water line. It was done in the 60s. I know all about it. I have all the information about it. Every time we turn around, it's like, oh, they're the end where we can put something up. I just heard about the storage buildings, which is not this meeting, I know, but I wish there was some way that the residents of Abington could be notified. I didn't know anything about the storage. I saw the crane company going up, and I stopped in at the planning board, and I was told, oh, it's just they're just going to put staging and everything. I don't know if any of you have gone by that, but that's disgusting. I pity the people that live across the street. It's just a mess. It's like a junkyard, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, back to the water company. I did hear someone say, maybe I got it wrong, the extension is the responsibility of the people on Abington Street, or not?
Yes,
It
that's
is-
what you heard right.
Us? No, so
Not what we're voting
not what
tonight.
we're voting on. So,
If you wanted to extend it beyond what's
Beyond.
being proposed to the end where Springwood Lane or perhaps Sharp Street, that would be on the dime of the applicant.
Okay, I'm not for
Yes,
any,
ma'am.
as you can tell.
Right, well,
We had a dead-end pipe, which is not allowed anymore. I don't know too much about the water company, but I heard something about a loop at your end. I hope that pipe which is not a dead-end pipe anymore, it's up on by the collaborative, and they have to flush it. Is that what you're gonna put in, gonna affect our pipe that has to be flushed regularly? What happens to our water?
So this proposed pipe, and these pipes are for the Aquarion water system, and the pipe you're connected to is the Abington Rockland water system, so they will not be interconnected or connected in any way.
We'll still have the flush at the end? Or do you
Whoever,
go-
whoever, I
Or you go
think,
to the end of where you're going to do the
whoever
extension?
operates and maintains your system, I believe they'll continue to do it however they do it. I'm not aware of how they do it.
But you don't know if the extension is going to,
So the extension that's in front of the,
seen any maps or anything,
I'm
so-
sorry, so it starts from the school and goes to the entrance of Little Sprouts, and that's where it ends. There'll be a fire hydrant right there at the Little Sprouts School. That's where the water main will end, and then there'll be a connection going into the Little Sprouts. So that's the limits and extents of the proposed water main.
The blow-off to our 2-inch plastic pipe is further down.
Okay,
What I'm asking, is that going to be interfered at all?
no.
Okay. That was, if we could, if anything in the future is going to go with Abington Street, like the storage area, I don't know. If, our street is so terrible now, and just all, it seems like we're getting, the residents are forgotten, and,
You know, it may seem that way, but it isn't that way.
Yeah.
We've studied this, and we've been addressing it, especially with the issue of Union Point looming large on the horizon.
I know.
You know, I realize that there are buildings on Sharp Street that are under-pressurized as well. Well, I mean, it all figures into the mix, ma'am, and, you know, we're trying as best we can. You know, my own view is that, you know, any increased fire protection up there is a plus
Yeah, I
for
agree.
you, for
I
all
agree.
of the residents there. And, you know, if Hingham Fire can, you know, run a line from a new hydrant up to a working fire, that's a good thing.
not if we have to pay for it. So, sorry.
Well,
I mean, if you have to, I heard last time the meeting, I forget, it was 2014, I think, 187,000 we'd have to pay for the
No, I think it was
pipe.
a little higher than that, I remember the
Yeah,
figure.
and
but
that, I mean,
What I'm hearing from the lieutenant is that a newly installed fire hydrant would facilitate the fire department's ability to run a line to a working house fire on Abington Street or Dennis Road or Hickey Road a lot better than what's in place right now. Is that right?
Correct, sir.
I'm sure. I live across from the fire.
Right.
That was on Christmas Day. It's just, it's financially, when you talk about the 13 of us, a lot of us are retired and living on a fixed income, and when you hit us with a price of 200, but I don't want it, I want Abington Rock on water. I don't want Aquarion water. So we will not be charged if you decide to run that extension to the end of Abington Street on the Rockland end,
I think
correct?
that's another discussion for another day, ma'am.
Oh.
You know, we're engaging in speculation. The costs of doing something like that are considerable. I don't know whether that would be a discussion just involving the residents or whether it would require a greater one with the businesses on Sharp Street as well.
The extension that you're doing now, though, for Little Sprouts is not going to affect us.
That will
Correct.
not cost you a dime.
And ma'am, the other piece that I would let you
Right.
know is, anytime a utility wants to do work in a street, whether it's gas or whether it's the water company, this grant of location process is a public process that happens every time. And just as you received a letter notifying you about this meeting, and some people did, that same process would happen. So if there was ever any consideration of doing anything with the water main further along Abington Street, you would be notified and have the opportunity to come in this public forum to let people know whether you like that idea or you didn't like that idea. Am I correct? So you would be notified if there was any future plan. What's happening right now will not affect your water service. You won't be asked to pay for anything, but as Selectman Healy said, you and your neighbors will have the benefit of having an additional fire hydrant and a larger main that will just help with, delivering water to that area if
Actually,
God
I'm
forbid
not
it's needed.
against Little Sprouts putting it up. I'm just against if you mess with our pipe already, that's all.
Certainly.
Mrs. Jurek, if I could just, for future, all of these hearings with respect to these proposals for buildings that are to be constructed anywhere in town are subject to publication, and that appears at the Hingham Journal.
Okay.
It's the favorite part of my newspaper, because it's how I keep track of what's going on.
Okay. Today, I mean, we got a letter in our mailbox, not even,
Sure.
yeah, I won't even get into that. But we got it a couple of days ago, and I'm like, oh, okay. And as for the storage area, that was in the Hingham Journal?
They were all published.
Can I just ask, I will make sure I get the Hingham Journal. I don't read it from cover to cover, sorry. Some things I don't want to read cover to cover. But can we just take care of our 22 people on Abington Street?
We're working on it, ma'am.
I know, but it's
a work in
bad.
progress.
The traffic is terrible. Give us a sidewalk then. But anyway, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
Okay, let's take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the request of Aquarion to install and maintain approximately 1,350 feet of 8-inch ductile iron water main in Abington Street. The new main will originate at the driveway of number 75 Research Road, approximately number 80 Abington Street, connecting into the existing 8-inch water main, and continue under the paved surface of Abington Street to completion at approximately number 48, in order to service the daycare facility Little Sprouts located at number 73 Abington Street. Also, this project will include one new hydrant. This approval is subject to the stipulation of the Department of Public Works as outlined in the letter dated February 11th, 2019.
Second, does it have to indicate that it's going to be looped, or that's, no? Okay, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Steve, may I just ask that if there, you mentioned that there is the potential for something conservation-related. May I please ask that, that you follow up with Lonnie in very short order, because I think as you've heard tonight, there are some folks that are sweating the timing. We can't control the weather. We hope the temperatures are cooperative, but let's do everything we can right now to anticipate and be ready so that people aren't any further inconvenienced or stressed beyond what they've had to already.
Agreed. I reached out to Lonnie a couple weeks ago when we knew we were submitting this application, just to give her a heads up we were going to be here, so. Post haste, we'll contact her.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for being here.
One and all. That's Steve Dursman.
Wow.
You never know, Steve Dursman. Well, Andrea was here.
She was here.
Andrea was.
She left.
Do you want to just do the Foster, Dot, and Michelle?
Sure. All right. Before we get to the next item, we're going to jump ahead and just take agenda item number 2. Whoop.
She's back.
There's Andrea. She's back. Okay.
Andrew, you want some water?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
Andrea, could you join us at the table, please?
Thank you.
Okay. We've made it.
Yes.
Guys, thank you for staying with us. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to turn this over to Andrea Young, our administrator for the Hingham Historical Commission.
Thank you. This is a proposal to set up the Preservation Award Evaluation Committee, as we discussed at a meeting back in November, maybe, I think.
12.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't that long.
And so we are, we agreed that we'd start out with a, oh, thank you so much.
It's on the house.
A 7-member committee, and then to go down to 5 members from then on. So what I put together here is that there will be several people who they've agreed to serve for 1 year. Peter Bickford, Suzanne Buchanan, and Ben Wilcox. And so they will be part of the 7-member committee. In addition, there will be 2 other Preservation Award Design Committee members this first year. And then we've got 2 new people, Jack Hobbs, who's an architect, and Jennifer Schwartz, who works for, she's a member of the Historical Society, and she does all sorts of great stuff. So, the idea being that the people who know the rationale behind the award and the criteria will be there at the beginning and then just phase off. So that what we'll have left then are people who understand the process and are knowledgeable about the criteria. So that's the way this, hopefully this makes sense.
Okay, I for one want to really thank you for staying with this and working so hard to put this together. I think it's a win-win for the town, and I think it's going to be received very well by the community. It's implemented. I don't have any questions.
Just echo the thanks, and to, again, we're so lucky that people are willing to step forward and volunteer to serve their community.
Well, and I like the way you've done this with sort of the original group that, as you suggest, has the institutional knowledge, but then involving new folks as this goes along, because that's part of it, right, is to try to get the community and the public involved in the appreciation of our historic assets.
Thank you.
Well done.
I don't have everybody in the audience. I'll make a motion to appoint Peter Bickford, Suzanne Buchanan, and Ben Wilcox to the Historic Preservation Award Evaluation Committee for a 1-year term ending June
2019. That's
30th,
right.
2019. Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll entertain a motion to appoint Ben Burnham and Sevi Strevelowski to the Historic Preservation Award Evaluation Committee for a 2-year term ending June 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Entertain a motion to appoint Jack Hobbs and Jennifer Schwartz to the Historic Preservation Award Evaluation Committee for a 2-year term ending June 30th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, ladies.
Don't forget, you're reserving April the 7th. That's when you're giving out these awards.
April 7th?
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Put that on the calendar.
Us.
All right. Thank you. All right. Item 10 on the agenda for tonight is the Warrant Article Z, Foster School Article to amend feasibility study vote. School committee is present. Please join us.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to come tonight to give you some updated information on Warrant Article Z on behalf of the school committee. We wanted to inform you that we have decided to withdraw the warrant article related to Foster School for this year. And just to note that while the article has been withdrawn, we did want to publicly acknowledge here tonight that the Board of Selectmen Advisory Committee and the school committee all recognize that the Foster School is one of the top capital priorities for the town, and that time is of the essence. So for the next several months, the school committee is going to be expending and diligently working on the application to be accepted into the MSBA eligibility period, and we respectfully would ask for you to continue to support us in that and to provide us for any assistance we may need from time to time as we apply for the SOI. And that was it.
And what's the timing on that, Michelle?
The SOI is due April 11th to the MSBA, and that's being worked on by the building committee, the school committee, and Mr. Ferris, and of course Dr. Gallo. And it's well on its way, and we have some good information to include in that.
And so it gets submitted in April, and then it gets considered over the summer, and when's the...
Yeah, the decisions are in December.
Yeah, okay.
So this year it was like mid-December that we heard.
Okay.
Yes. So.
Just wondering, like, you know, you and I were or you and I, were together for the computer fair at Foster a week or so ago. I'm just wondering about the involvement of our state delegation in some of this process, because I know Senator O'Connor at least had offered to try to facilitate some conversations.
Yes.
You know, is that something that you?
Absolutely. Yeah, having the legislators involved will be very important. And I think one thing that would be helpful this year, we're going to invite the MSBA to come back for another site visit.
Good
They
idea.
came in 2017, but they did not come last year. And things have not gotten any better.
Well, no, and I do think seeing the building, I think it's a complex layout, and I think seeing the challenges of delivering the program within that kind of tricky space where you have interior classrooms and, you know, I think there's no substitute for seeing how that space is currently being utilized.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's really not conducive to 21st century learning. I mean, they're doing great things there, and the computer science forum was awesome. But I think, you know, I mean, the electrical system there just won't support a lot of the computer programming that needs to be done. So
right. Okay. So I guess if you need help from us, I suppose, in facilitating any of that, you know, that may be one way we can be helpful.
I know Ted went to the meeting with the MSBA at Foster in 2017, right, Liza? I'm obviously happy to do the same now. Any help we can do along the way, talking to legislators, doing other things.
Okay.
Yep.
We're here.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, I do, you know, so Senator O'Connor, you know, noted the reality that we've all experienced, which is, you know, there are more schools putting in applications, the buildings are bigger, and the pool of funds is just, what is it, a half cent on the sales tax or something?
I think it's 1 cent, but
1 cent on the sales tax. So it's a finite pool, and, you know, instead of being able to fund 20 projects like they once were able to do, they're able to fund 11 or something like that. So I do feel like the more we advocate for ourselves at this point, you know, we've been patient, right? We've experienced their support in the past. We've also been patient on this project, but as you suggest, the time is of the essence for this. But I guess I also appreciate the focus on the MSBA funding for this cycle. So I appreciate that. I know that probably was not an easy decision for the school committee to make, and I do think it shows the town that you're working hard to get that done.
yes, and that's what we wanted to reflect, and we thought that was where our efforts were best focused this year, is trying to get this funding from the MSBA. So we can
And I know
move
we
forward.
we made the necessary vote on the SOI a couple of weeks ago, but to the extent over the next several months, there's, you know, I think we all want to work together and bring all of the resources of the town to bear on really demonstrating this need.
Yep.
And so as this unfolds, we'd like to be helpful where we can. I think, you know, in 2017, we, as a town, took the sort of, you know, slightly unusual step of asking town meeting to make the feasibility funding available and to form the building committee so that we could be ready.
Right.
And I understand that the conditions make it difficult. I understand that there are students moving through the building, and if you're a parent of a fourth or a fifth grader, a solution feels pretty far off. I totally understand that, at the same time, I think there's a shared realization that we have to do something with Foster School, and I hope we can all work together to just demonstrate that need and make the most compelling case we can to the state.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I have 5 sisters and a brother go to Foster. 5 of my children went there, and 2 of my grandchildren presently go there. I recognize the importance of the neighborhood school. I think when you meet with the state, you should take them on a little tour to the shipyard and to Beal Street. Because I think you really need to impress upon them that that is going to be a continuing demand on the school system. I was talking today with our state representative, Joe Moschino, pressing upon her the need that we have for the assistance, all hands on deck, to get the kind of assistance we need to address this effectively.
Yes.
So thank you very much for your wise decision on what you did here.
Thank you.
Really value that and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming tonight.
No, thank you. All right.
Okay, got a couple of votes. Well, actually, yes. Interesting vote here. Water Company Enterprise Fund budget.
So we've been advised by our council that should the town vote to acquire the water company, that we actually have a statutory requirement to have a budget in place by certain deadlines, and that's what this is intended to accomplish.
Can I just make a couple comments about this budget? So I'll just be really brief. So, you know, there've been a lot of questions about an enterprise fund and what happens and things like that. So in the next fiscal year, if the town were to purchase the water company, we would keep the rates that are currently set in effect for that first year. And that means that we would be collecting a little bit over $13 million in revenue. And I just want to mention where some of that money is going to be spent, because I think that there's a lot of information out there. So what would the budget cover? The budget would cover the salaries for the water superintendent and some administrative support. And that would be salaries and benefits. And that's about $250,000. I'm not going to read these numbers exactly. And there will be operating expenses of about $4.4 million, which is the cost for the daily operations and maintenance, which the town is proposing be outsourced initially. Then there's about $830,000, which is a payment in lieu of taxes. And the important thing here is that right now, the Aquarion Water Company, or I guess Eversource, if you will, pays the town property taxes for all the land it owns. And in the financial model that the town's put together, it proposes that under town ownership, the water company would continue to make that payment, but it would be a payment in lieu of taxes, which is very similar to what Hingham Light does. And so what that means is that we're not taking parcels off the property tax roll. We're not going to lose revenue as a town. We're just going to be getting it in a different way. And then the debt service for both the acquisition and the capital investment in that first year would be about $2.7 million. So essentially what's going to happen in year one is that the expenses are going to be about $8.2 million, but we're collecting $13 million in revenue. So what we are proposing, and we've talked with Gene Montgomery on this, which has been really helpful, is that we will have a surplus in that first year of just under $5 million. And what we would propose is that be a line item in the budget, so that if there are any unusual or extraordinary expenses that come to bear, we have funds available. So essentially what's going to happen is that in this first year, we will build up close to a $5 million rainy day fund in the first year alone. And there have been a lot of questions from people about, you know, what happens if there's an unexpected expense, or suggestions that the town of Hingham would need to, that Hingham taxpayers, we would use Hingham taxpayer money if there was a budget issue at the water company. What we've contemplated in this year one budget is that we will begin to accumulate a surplus. And by the way, that surplus will remain in the water company. Down the road, if we want to, we could establish a rate stabilization fund. We could establish a capital stabilization fund. But this gives us the maximum flexibility. And, you know, I think it's pretty remarkable that in the first year of a budget for an operation like this, you know, having a having a budget surplus of close to $5 million on a $13 million revenue base just really puts us in a very healthy and a strong position. And I think with respect to the questions about something unexpected that comes up, I feel like this puts us in a really good position. So I'd also note that in subsequent years, in year 2, year 3, that budget surplus will be a little smaller, because at that time we'd be issuing long-term debt. But I think it's both noteworthy, and it provides a level of protection and assurance for both ratepayers and for Hingham taxpayers.
Thank you. We'll continue to speak on this issue. And as the days roll out, we'll provide more details on forum that's going to occur in Hingham. We're going to be traveling to Hull, meet with the residents of Hull, lay out what we intend to do there as well. We're continuing to have these issues as well as other matters associated with the acquisition of the water company discussed by our different town boards. So I'd like to thank the residents for their continued attention to this generationally important issue. Is there anything?
Can I make a motion on the budget?
Certainly.
I'd make a motion that, here's the vote list. Sorry about that. Just want to make sure I'm using the right language. I'd make a motion to approve the water company enterprise fund budget for fiscal year 20.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll entertain a motion to open the warrant for the 2019 annual town meeting, remove Article KK, Library Building Committee, and Article LL, Library Building Project, and to close the warrant.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to approve the request of Discover Hingham for the Taste of Hingham to be held on Saturday, May 18th, 2019, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. with a rain date of Sunday, May 19th, 2019, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. This event will be held on Main Street between Elm and North Street, as well as on the sidewalk.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the regular business for tonight. I will alert the public that we're anticipating that we will meet on Thursday evening as well. So you're welcome to join us while we're here or in the comfort of your living room on the TV set. Or, is that what they call them? I don't have one, so. Anyways, Michelle?
Nothing, thank you.
Anything you'd like to add? Thomas?
No, thank you. I'm good.
I think it's a smart TV.
Something like that.
Something like that.
I'd just like the public to know that Michelle and Tom have been very, very busy in these weeks, run up to town meetings, so the board thanks them profusely.
The fact that they're still smiling is a testament to both of them. Thank you. I had a couple shout-outs. Hingham High School girls winter track team, state champions. Way to go, ladies. You heard me say to the school committee folks, I stopped by at the Foster School Computer Programming Fair, supported in large part by the Hingham Education Foundation, and it was just, it was a blast. It was a Friday morning, and these kids can do more on their laptops than I can even imagine. So they are starting basic coding in kindergarten all the way up, and it was just really, really fun to watch the kids work in collaborative groups, and it was good again to also get over to Foster School. And then last but not least, we got a press release, right, Sally, from the Air Force, that there's a Hingham native who is a staff sergeant in the Air Force Special Tactics Group, a guy named Daniel Kelleher, and he is joining with 18 of his comrades to ruck 830 miles across 5 states in honor of 20 airmen killed in action who were part of the Air Force Special Tactics team. And if you don't know what a ruck is, I did look it up to be sure, but I ran in a road race once, and I thought I was speeding along, and all of a sudden these guys in full gear with backpacks and boots came flying by me. That's what these guys are doing. They're dressed in their fatigues with their backpacks, and they're going to cover 830 miles in support of their comrades. So to Daniel Kelleher, we salute you, sir.
I would just note that Lincoln Day is always a great day. I hope am I taking your thunder?
Go ahead.
So, I'm good. I'm gonna save the rest of it for you and just say I was glad to be there and enjoyed the day.
You know, Lincoln Day is just so much fun, no matter where you're sitting in the church. It's a historic gathering. You can sing patriotic songs, and you can just envision the great history that this town has had. You know, I can't recommend it enough, and it is truly a favorite. I want to expand a little bit on what Karen said about this particular ruck march. I've seen a couple of pictures of my son after he got through a ruck. It's a grueling exercise, and the Air Force has a special tactics unit which flies into war zones under fire and rescues wounded soldiers and takes them out in these helicopters and this is in the mountains of Afghanistan, and they're doing this 835-mile, 5-state march in honor of the men and women who have been killed doing this kind of incredibly brave work. There's been a Medal of Honor awarded to one of them. There's been 10 Air Force Crosses and 44 Silver Stars. So it just speaks to the bravery, and it's a privilege and an honor that we have such an individual in that unit that comes from this town, Staff Sergeant Daniel Kelleher. So if you see the family of the Staff Sergeant, make sure you extend your compliments. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye. Good night, everybody.
Everyone.